I know it's extremely late. All I can say is I'm sorry. But hopefully this video, I worked really hard on this, will make up for it. And it's on one of my favorite Naruto characters, villains, and overall characters in general. And you read the title, A Defense of Obito Uchiha. Maybe that's too provocative, but it's more of me sort of going through his character arc and my interpretation of why I think he did the things he did. And I suppose I have more sympathy towards him than dislike, like most other people. So I'll just go down sort of like a biography. Obito never knew his parents growing up. They died in a mission. The only caring person in his life he had was his grandma. She was the only person, family, friends, anything he had. His grandma was the person who instilled his values into him, and he always had a kind heart. He gets paired with Kakashi, Rin, and Minato in Team 7, and he has a huge crush on Rin, but doesn't find much success in it. Rin always supports him. She's very caring of Obito. This was her being just a good friend, and he's a teenage boy, and he falls even more in love with her. His crush develops. But worse than that, Rin seems to like Kakashi, which is she did, and Kakashi, the natural prodigy, seems to have it all. He becomes very jealous of Kakashi for obvious reasons. He begins this rivalry, although it's a bit of a one-sided rivalry at this point with Kakashi, and promises Rin he would become the Hokage. He felt very alone for being an outcast and a bit of a klutz, but every time he felt lost, Rin would always help him find his way. She was more than a mere love interest. She was his salvation. Of course, Minato, Kushina, Kakashi, at least later on, cared for him, but they did not nearly affect him on such a profound level. We are presented with a kid with a good heart, just a sweet kid struggling with the natural struggles of life, at least those presented to a preteen, I guess. Of course, this within context of the story, so he faces a little bit more than just us kids. We all know what he goes through. I wanna emphasize that it wasn't, Rin dying wasn't his only hardship he faced. He had a series of worsening torments that leads up to a final breaking point. He was always ostracized for being a bit incompetent, especially since he was a Uchiha, a clan of ultra-powerful ninja. He was, of course, an orphan. He was unsuccessful in Rin, at least in the manner he was pursuing as a friend. Sure, but not as a lover. He still tried to keep his head up. At this point, he did have a lot of hardships, but he wasn't depressed or anything, and he worked really hard. He worked his ass off to get promoted to Chunin, and on the surface level, he seems to be doing pretty decent, However, despair would slowly creep in, and the Third Great Ninja War, him, Kakashi, all of them are thrown in. They're only kids, by the way, maybe 12. He puts on a mission with Kakashi and Rin, but in the process Rin gets captured. Kakashi decides to go along with the mission through his dogma of always following the rules, because breaking the rules stole his father away from him. If only his dad went along with the mission, Kakashi would not have to be alone. But Obito challenges this belief. He says, "Those who break the rules may be scum, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum." Kakashi understood on a much deeper level why his dad did what he did, and he decides to go rescue Rin. So this is the kind of person Obito was, you know. He's the first one to utter that famous line. They try to go save Rin, but it's an ambush. Kakashi gets injured, and the enemy collapses a cave. Seeing the hundreds of boulders raining down, Obito instinctively pushes Kakashi out of the way and sacrifices himself. He gives Kakashi his Sharingan for becoming a Jonin. Even at the end of his life, he sacrifices himself for him, and he gives him his last piece of him, his most prized possession, his Sharingan, to this kid who has always been a bit of a dick to him. He's always been jealous of. That's the type of kid Obito was. This is a kid who has suffered through an agonizingly demanding life, sacrificing his life for his lifelong rival who has belittled him, and he promises him to take care of his beloved. But destiny had different things in mind. He opens his eyes. He's in a dark cave. There's an ancient man, some kind of creature. This man turns out to be the great Madara Uchiha, and he poisons our already tortured hero. We see a hyper-intelligent megalomaniac instilling seemingly reasonable ideology on a very vulnerable and emotionally broken child. But still, Obito does not succumb to despair. He desperately clings on to some bits of hope. He would go back to his life. He could still live. He runs out into the forest. He's desperately trying to go back to some positive aspect of life. Any bits of hope. But what is he faced with? What is he rewarded with? His best friend that he sacrificed his life for. Someone who promised to protect the girl he loved is the same person killing her right in front of him. And this is his breaking point. He's completely shattered. This is where he loses his mind. This is where he discovers hell. It is not the only reason he falls into despair. It is a series of catastrophes leading up to hell. At this point, Obito adopts this utopic dream. He was completely broken. He had nothing at all. He needed something to grab onto. He had a dream, an illusion. He had Mother's plan for peace in his mind, and he latches onto it as his only purpose for living. He tries to adopt a very utilitarian dream. A lot of people seem to assume that the main reason Obito does all of this is because the infinite Tsukuyomi would bring back Rin. But This is just absurd. First of all, he outright says it to Kakashi, this isn't about Rin. He says, look at the hole in my heart. There's nothing there. He was nothing. He felt nothing. The shinobi world needed to change. He wanted to make the world a better place. Especially because he had seen just how insufferable the shinobi world truly was in its essence. He masterminded the whole Akatsuki. Yes, Madara urged him, but he was one of the smartest characters in the entire series. He understood what he was doing. There was no hope in the world. Every single thing he tried to have faith in had something corrupt about it. He was empty. He needed something, anything at all. He decided to pursue a world where the current hell didn't exist, even if it was just an illusion. A world that would not steal a father away from a child. A world where kids wouldn't be thrown into a war. A world without the cycle of hatred perpetuating pain. That's the least people deserved, even if it meant he had to become the devil. He would bear the burden of this world under a mask. Obito Uchiha was dead because the shinobi world killed Obito Uchiha and birthed the monster. Or at least that's what he tried to accomplish. The Will of Fire is an idea shared among Konoha's villagers that love and loyalty are the ideals that should be upheld above all else. Anything less is shunned and changes how the villagers views the offending shinobi. This ideal turned out to be hypocritical with how villagers initially treated Naruto, who became the object of their hate and distrust as the Nine-Tailed Jinchuriki. It states that the entire village is like a large family unit, and every Konoha shinobi with the Will of Fire loves, believes, cherishes, and fights to protect the village, as previous generations had done before them. Whether Obito liked to admit it or not, this will was always a part of him. He always wanted to be accepted. He wanted to help others with love, loyalty, and community. However, even as a child, he began to see cracks in this ideal. It may be a great ideal, but the hypocritical duality of shinobi never allowed them to live up to those. Shinobi are human beings, not tools, that all come together to form a machine, a perfect machine. This ideal is something shinobi strived for, but it is not the reality of this world. Furthermore, shinobi could justify any amount of malice within their soul in order to adhere to their dogma. So much so that when anyone challenges the status quo, they're ostracized and oppressed. The world puts on a facade of perfection, but there are many victims of this system. And the system hides away its flaws. They set them off. They violate their rights. Systematic discrimination. Pretending it's not even there. But this system casts dark shadows. These victims, they either choose the path of suicidal nihilism, or they willingly bear the burdens of this shinobi world in order to make a change. He saw that there was truly no hope in this world. No matter what system was put in place, as long as shinobi were shinobi, flawed human beings, it would always corrupt into an oppressive tyranny hiding away its flaws, sustaining their wealth, power through the destruction of smaller nations and people, and on the backs of people that they willingly sacrifice. Seeing this, Obito decides, no matter what, no one shall experience the hell they had to live through. Throughout the whole war, Obito repeatedly tests Naruto's will to see if hope can really prevail in this hellish shinobi world. But even after each and every effort of Obito's to break Naruto's will, Naruto never gives up. Not only this, Naruto reintroduces some of the excruciatingly painful ideas that Obito locked away in a deep cage in his mind. Naruto saw everything Obito went through. He wholeheartedly understood why Obito did what he did. If he had nothing to fall back on, if he didn't have Iruka Sensei, if he didn't have Jiraiya, if he didn't have Kakashi, if he didn't have Sakura, if he didn't have the Leaf Village, he would have done the same thing. After becoming the Ten-Tailed Jinchuriki, he gets very close to his dream of the infinite Tsukiyomi, but he debates if that truly is heaven on earth. Is that really salvation? No matter how much Obito tries to abandon the past, no matter how many times he says he is an Obito Uchiha, the fact is that he still is the same little boy who wanted to become a Hokage, who helped old ladies cross the road, who wanted friends, who wanted love, who wanted to make the world a better place. The fact of the matter is that his whole life's work has been to fix the mistakes of the past. He's completely shaped by the past. How can he abandon it? No matter how much he tried to run away from his past self, he was still Obito Uchiha. After all, he was the first to say, those who break the rules may be scum, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. He was still the same kind-hearted kid. He tried to say he was no one, but Naruto challenged this. He looked back at his past and saw what his life could have been if he's never lost hope. If he not only abandoned his friend, but if he didn't abandon the whole world itself. All his hardships would not disappear, but maybe he would have something to live for instead of this pain. He would have Kakashi. Maybe Minato would still be around. Rin would still be gone, but it would be a better existence than the empty shell of a life he had lived up to at that point. Maybe he didn't have to be tortured for such a long time. He could have had friends, he could have had a family, he could have had people supporting him. Maybe he could have become Hokage. He didn't need to bear the burden of the shinobi world by himself. He didn't have to run away. He didn't have to be alone. After Naruto brings back his doubts that he locked away to protect himself from the atrocities he committed in the pursuit of the infinite Tsukiyomi, he thinks to himself, was all this really the right path? Did he have other options? He starts to regret his decisions. He reflects on his life. Every atrocity he committed, every decision he made. What if he didn't embrace despair and to say I did? To hold on to hope. What if he came back to the Leaf Village and lived out his life with Kakashi and Minato beside him? Could he really become the Hokage? Was the world a hell because he wanted to make it into a hell? But can you really blame him? He was just a child, and he had everything taken away from him in the most agonizing way imaginable. He may have chosen the wrong. He may have lost his path. But given his situation, what could he really do? What would you do? What would I do? Maybe we're all just a scared little child trying to survive in this unbelievably wretched world. Life is quite difficult, and I don't blame anyone for being unable to bear that pain. But no matter what hell you face, don't ever give up on yourself, because even when it feels like we're nothing, we have ourselves to live for. Thanks for watching.